Hello, good afternoon. Thank you everyone that is joining us today for the webinar on monitoring free, prior and informed consent. Welcome to the session today. We'll wait just for 1 or 2 more minutes to allow all the other people that have signed up for the webinar to join, and we'll be officially kicking off. So welcome everyone again to today's webinar. Good afternoon. And yes, welcome again. This webinar will provide you today with an overview of the FPIC-360 monitoring and verification tool to implement free, prior and informed consent processes. Just a few things before we officially start with the agenda. We want to let you know that this webinar is being recorded, and we will share the recording together with the slides to all the attendees. And the recording will be also available on the FPIC360 website for future reference as well. Throughout the session, we have enabled the Q&A section, so we encourage you to put in your questions throughout the presentations, and we have some time at the end to go through them with our panelists. And just so you know as well, we have the interpretation option available. One of our panelists today, Rubén Pinto, will be speaking in Spanish, so if you choose the English channel, you will be able to access the whole session in English as well. So without further ado, let's start with the agenda for today. We'll first hear today from Elena Schmidt, the Interim Executive Director at the Roundtable for Sustainable Biominerals, to formally open the webinar. After her opening remarks, we will dive into the FPIC-360 project with Soledad Mills, CEO at Equitable Origin. She will be followed by Rubén Pinto Varias, Indigenous Rights Specialist and Legal Advisor to Confederation of Indigenous Peoples of Bolivia, who will be presenting on free, prior and informed consent in Latin America. After his presentation, Kaki Kommer, Program Analyst at Equitable Origin, will take us through the FPIC-360 tool. And once those presentations are finished, we will open the floor to questions that, as I mentioned before, you will be popping into the Q&A section throughout the session. So without further ado, I introduce you to Elena Schmidt.
Thank you very much, Vicky, and welcome also from RSB side to this webinar. And I would like to give you a short intro why FPIC and the collaboration with Equitable Origin is so important to us. So RSB is a membership-based organization, bringing together industry leaders, academia, NGO experts, producers of different scales, who all have the ambition to shape a sustainable transition to a bio-based and circular economy. So our members cover sector leaders from aviation, shipping, chemicals, consumer goods, science, environmental and social NGOs. And this is what makes us so unique here. So we all come together and see these challenges that our societies and our economies are now facing, with impacts of climate change hitting, exploitation of natural resources leading to food insecurity, water scarcity, and biodiversity being threatened. RSB offers this platform where relevant voices come to one table to discuss all these solutions to overcome challenges and create a zero carbon, sustainable sector transition of sectors like aviation, shipping, energy, chemicals, materials, textiles, and so on. So together, our members have adopted these 12 sustainability principles underpinned by criteria and auditor guidance, building the global best practice on how to mitigate sustainability risks effectively across entire supply chains. And this is the only way how we can do this transition of the economy. It is to adhere to this robust set of sustainability criteria to avoid any unintended effects. And FPIC is a critical element in our sustainability standard. And this standard is applied in early project development. Brands apply it when they switch their supply chains from fossil-based to bio-based and circular. It is also applied in feedstock availability assessments to analyze feedstock availability through the lens of sustainability. And RSB also operates a certification systems. And as we apply FPIC in our standards, it also became clear to us that it is really a challenge for auditors and certification bodies, also for early project developers to properly implement and assess it. For audits, as audits are only a snapshot moment of when the auditor inspects a facility, but we know that FPIC, and we will hear it in this webinar, is an ongoing iterative process. And it is the risk for standard systems like for the RSB that we are challenged when applying FPIC not adequately. And therefore, a tool like the 360 tool is highly needed. And not only for the certification, but also other applications that are mentioned, for example, in early project development. Also, when FPIC is not monitored appropriately over time, as it is a process, there is the risk that the relationship with communities is undermined, that the rights of indigenous people are not appropriately safeguarded, which will negatively affect not only the entire operation, but ultimately also undermines all those efforts that we are taking to transform our sectors into low carbon and bio-based sectors. FPIC can only be conducted responsibly and successfully if indigenous people affected by a proposed project are the co-owners and implementers of the entire project. And the tools need to be easy to understand and also accessible to community representatives, as well as to the certified company and the auditors. And I think this has been really achieved with the work on the tool, and therefore I'm really looking forward to this webinar today, and welcome again.
Thank you so much, Elena, for the introduction and highlighting the importance of FPIC today. I will now hand over to Soledad Mills, CEO of Equitable Origin, who will provide some background information about the FPIC-360 project. Thank you, Sol.
Thank you, Vicky, and thank you very much, Elena, for giving a great introduction to this project. I'm just going to give a quick background on the project before we get into the rest of the agenda. So in 2017, in partnership with RSB and COICA, the coordinator of indigenous organizations of the Amazon Basin, we started a project to look at how FPIC is incorporated into voluntary standards and what challenges exist in implementation and verification. The project is co-financed by the ICL Innovations Fund, which is supported by the Swiss State Secretariat for Economic Affairs. Next slide, please. So over the last 4 years of the project, we've expanded what started out as a working group providing input to the development of the FPIC-360 tool into a network of potential users of the tool. Members include other standard setting organizations, indigenous organizations, NGOs, financial institutions, assurance providers, and independent experts. Next slide, please. To develop this framework, we started out by researching international human rights law, existing normative and voluntary standards, safeguards, and guidance on FPIC. We also worked with COICA to convene workshops with representatives from 15 indigenous groups in Colombia, Ecuador, and Peru to learn about how communities perceived FPIC, what they considered to be successful FPIC processes, and what conditions they determined that they would need to be in place for them to meaningfully participate in and drive those processes. As a result of these activities, we found that a lot of the existing guidance tended to be project developer-centric and linear, whereas FPIC is ongoing and iterative. It didn't provide guidance on how to ensure FPIC processes are community-driven, and it tended to focus on outputs rather than the process or conditions under which FPIC is carried out. So based on these learnings, we drafted a monitoring framework for FPIC that's designed to enable a rights-based, community-centered approach to assessing the principles, processes, and conditions for a meaningful FPIC process. Before we hand it over to my colleague Kaki Comer to walk us through the tool, we'd like to welcome Ruben Pinto Vargas to share some opening remarks about the context of FPIC in Latin America. Ruben is an Indigenous lawyer and specialist in the rights of Indigenous peoples in FPIC. He's a legal advisor to the Confederation of Indigenous Peoples of Bolivia, which is a member of COICA, and he's presented cases on Indigenous rights before the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights. Ruben will be speaking in Spanish, so please make sure you have enabled your language channel to English if you would like to hear the translation. Thank you, Ruben, for joining us, and please go ahead with your presentation.
Muchas gracias. Les agradezco mucho a los organizadores por la confianza en para presentar este caso que es muy importante para los derechos de los pueblos indígenas. En este marco es necesario inicialmente conocer cuál es el escenario jurídico en el que nos estamos desenvolviendo actualmente. En cuanto a los tratados internacionales, desde 1989 contamos con el convenio 169 de la OIT, que se constituye en el instrumento más importante por el efecto vinculante que tiene para los pueblos indígenas y para los estados. De los 22 países que han ratificado este tratado, 14 son latinoamericanos. Eso es un dato muy importante al momento de establecer el cumplimiento del tratado. El 2007 se logra la Declaración de Naciones Unidas sobre los derechos de los pueblos indígenas, pero después de 20 años de lucha y debate con los estados sobre este tratado. El 2016 se logra la declaración de la OEA sobre derechos de los pueblos indígenas. En cuanto a las constituciones de los estados en nuestros países, en el Ecuador el 2008 y en Bolivia el 2009, recién se incorpora el derecho de los pueblos indígenas en disposiciones constitucionales. Y en estas constituciones se establece el derecho a la consulta libre previa informada. En cuanto a las leyes y reglamentos que tenemos en nuestros países, el 2011 el Perú promulga la ley y reglamento de la consulta, y el hermano pueblo de México en los estados de San Luis Potosí, Oaxaca, Durango, emiten leyes sobre los derechos de la consulta a pueblos indígenas. A pesar de que están limitadas y limitan mucho los parámetros internacionales, estas leyes son las que tenemos en este escenario actualmente. En cuanto a las sentencias del Tribunal de la Corte Interamericana de Derechos Humanos, es el pueblo Sarayaku del Ecuador que logra el 2012 una sentencia muy favorable y que establece de forma amplia los parámetros internacionales de la consulta. Antes del pueblo hermano de Sarayaku, los hermanos de Salamanca en Surinam logran una sentencia de la Corte Interamericana de Derechos Humanos que establece de forma clara que la buena fe es un elemento transversal en el proceso de consulta. Además, que el consentimiento es un elemento determinante en estos procesos. En cuanto a las jurisdicciones nacionales, todos los países, Colombia, Bolivia, Perú, Ecuador, hemos activado mecanismos de protección en nuestros países, pero recientemente Bolivia, Perú y Ecuador logran sentencias con una interpretación favorable al derecho a la consulta. Pero como pasa en el caso de Bolivia, la sentencia 300 le mandaba al Estado boliviano a cumplir con un debate, un acuerdo, a cumplir con un proceso concertado con los pueblos indígenas durante el proceso de consulta. El Estado boliviano, en el caso del TINIS, decide omitir esta obligación y impone a los pueblos del TINIS una consulta a partir de sus propios parámetros. Este es nuestro escenario en cuanto al avance jurídico, a las normas jurídicas. No es el más ideal, no es el mejor, pero tenemos un respaldo muy importante en referencia a los tratados internacionales, que son como nuestra principal arma para defender nuestros derechos. En cuanto a los casos que tenemos, cuál es la situación que nos encontramos, este marco jurídico debería proteger a nuestras comunidades y a nuestras instituciones. Pero lo que tenemos actualmente es procesos como el del TINIS en el 2011, que todavía sigue activo en Bolivia. Procesos como el de los hermanos quichuas en el Perú, que están exigiendo el derecho a la consulta ante la exploración hidrocarburífera. Los hermanos de los territorios indígenas de México están resistiendo al Tren Maya y a los procesos, a los megaproyectos del gobierno. En el caso de los hermanos del Brasil, están exigiendo la demarcación de sus territorios, pero además que se garantice el ejercicio del derecho a la consulta. Nuestros hermanos del Cauca en Colombia están exigiendo de igual forma que se garantice el ejercicio de la consulta ante el avasallamiento de sus territorios y emprendimientos mineros. Los hermanos del Ecuador, de Bolivia, en el caso de Rositas, de Balachepete, igual en Bolivia, y de los casos de Brasil frente a las hidroeléctricas, están de igual forma pidiendo que se garantice su derecho a la consulta libre preinformada ante estas iniciativas del Estado de construir hidroeléctricas en nuestros territorios. Este es el escenario en el que nos encontramos los pueblos indígenas. Tenemos una normativa que nos respalda, un marco jurídico que nos respalda, pero tenemos que exigirle al Estado el cumplimiento a través de las marchas, a través de acciones pacíficas, que cumpla con las obligaciones que ha contraído en los instrumentos internacionales y que a veces nos garantizan la Constitución. En este marco es muy importante para nosotros el pleno conocimiento del derecho a la consulta y sobre todo el pleno conocimiento del Estado del derecho a la consulta. ¿Qué significa para nosotros los pueblos indígenas el derecho a la consulta? El derecho a la consulta para nosotros significa que en realidad es nuestro derecho. La consulta es nuestro derecho, pero también es un mecanismo para lograr otros derechos. Un mecanismo para lograr el derecho a la territorialidad, para lograr el derecho a la libre determinación, expresado el derecho a la libre determinación en decidir nosotros como comunidades indígenas cómo queremos vivir y cómo queremos que se desarrolle nuestra vida a lo largo de lo que nos queda en este espacio territorial. Pero también la consulta se constituye en un espacio muy importante para el diálogo con el Estado, en el que nosotros podamos generar esos acuerdos con el Estado. Muchas veces no se logran los acuerdos con el Estado, no porque exista un marco insuficiente legal, sino porque el mismo Estado, los mismos funcionarios no saben cómo desarrollar un proceso de consulta. Y muchas veces lo desarrollan como un taller, como un seminario. Y en nuestros territorios muchas veces las comunidades no cuentan con todos los insumos para poder exigir que se cumplan los estándares internacionales. En este marco nosotros no llegamos a un acuerdo. Y como lo ha señalado el relator de Naciones Unidas, cuando no podemos participar los pueblos indígenas en las decisiones del país, se vulneran nuestros derechos y en muchos casos se ponen en riesgo la vida de la población indígena. El derecho a la consulta debe llevarnos a un proceso de diálogo, de acuerdo con el Estado. Muchas gracias.
Thank you, thank you a lot, Ruben, for your insights on this matter. And now we will get a closer look into the FPIC-360 tool, guided by Kaki Kommer, Equitable Origin Program Analyst. Kaki, over to you.
Thanks so much. We can go to the next slide. One more. Perfect. So just to start off, I wanted to go through the structure of the tool and how it intends to serve some of the points that Ruben brought up in terms of the FPIC processes. So the tool serves as a diagnostic tool to facilitate the monitoring of FPIC processes and intends to address these power imbalances that Ruben was mentioning by increasing community participation in the assurance process. As Soledad mentioned, it is aligned with international human rights law and FPIC safeguards and intends to be a step-by-step educational resource and roadmap for FPIC implementation. It also facilitates the gathering and archiving of verifiable evidence from multiple sources who might be involved in the FPIC process, so from the top down and from the bottom up. Through the project, we intended to create a user-friendly interface for tracking this progress and managing evidence and documentation in support of FPIC processes. And in addition, trying to facilitate dialogue between all of the relevant parties involved in an FPIC process. We hope that we created a sort of more iterative approach to monitoring FPIC rather than a linear checkbox exercise. For each step of the FPIC process, the tool provides guidance on good practice to meet normative obligations and commitments. We've included links to further information and resources, and the tool also focuses on implementation, guidance, and examples of verifiable evidence and documentation. Next slide. The web-based platform specifically can benefit multiple users and parties involved in FPIC. It can be used by a project developer for the implementation of FPIC, which is the way we'll be demonstrating it today is from that point of view. But it can also be used by independent verification bodies or assurance providers, and can be used as an add-on to certification audits to oversee the process. And it can also be used for financial institutions or other parties in coordination with the project developer. All three users could be using the tool at the same time, working collaboratively to carry out, track progress, and verify the FPIC process. Next slide, please. Before we jump into the tool itself, I just wanted to explain a little bit more about the development process that we've been through with the tool. So from 2017 to 2019, we conducted extensive background research and consultation with Indigenous peoples, as Soledad mentioned. In 2019, we also created a community of practice to further refine the indicators. And this year, we're formally launching the Excel tool as well as the web-based platform. We are looking for opportunities to further develop the tool, including a case study application, which I'll speak to a bit later. So we'll jump into the demo here. First, wanted to take you to our website. This is sort of the landing page, FPIC360.org. And I just wanted to mention as well, as I walk through the tool and the platform, if you have questions, please feel free to type them into the Q&A function, and we'll be addressing them at the end of the session. So there are currently two versions of the tool. One of them is an Excel, which can be downloaded on the website. The other is a web-based platform. The two tools are identical in their requirements, so it's mostly just a matter of preference as to which structure you prefer. If you go to our website, you'll see that it serves as a resource hub and has extensive guidance on FPIC itself, as well as the FPIC360 tool. If you click here, FPIC360 Tool, at the top, this is the tool landing page. And here's where you can access the tools. On this page, we've also included some guidance on using the tool, as well as the different stages. And then we've also included some guidance on the difference between free, prior, and informed consent and consultation, and how the tool addresses both of these in tandem. If we scroll back up to the top, we have some FAQs here. We also have more FAQs if you click this button. But we encourage you to definitely explore the website if you are interested in learning more about FPIC or the tool itself. To get to the Excel, just send me an email, and I'm happy to email it over you. So I just wanted to pull up the Excel quickly so you can get a brief view of it. It consists of a user guide here at the beginning to demonstrate how a project developer would use the tool. And it has instructions and takes you through the entire workbook. We also have a start page here. The start page just shows you the spectrum of consultation and more about the monitoring of FPIC. And then you can see each subsequent tab is a subsequent step of the FPIC process or activity. And it walks you through what you're required to do, which documentation you should upload, and then it will track your progress as you upload the supporting documentation. These will turn to checks, and you'll be able to track your progress throughout the FPIC process using this tool. Just wanted to pull that up quickly so you had a sense of what the Excel looks like. But I think the more exciting part is the web-based platform, which you can access by clicking this link. And then what our idea was behind the web-based platform, and I'll go back to this page, was to hopefully create a more user-friendly and collaborative approach to FPIC. I'll walk you through, as I mentioned, the tool from the perspective of a project developer, but because it is a collaborative process, we have made this platform to allow multiple users to contribute to each project in multiple ways. When you go to access the web-based platform, you'll be asked to create an account, and then a member of our Equitable Origin team will be in contact with you just to get a better sense of the project and the application of the tool that you're hoping to use it under, and then we'll help you set up an account. Just a note that this tool will be free for ISEAL members, but will require a small registration fee for non-members. When you log into the platform, this is what you'll see, the landing page. It has a brief explanation of the tool here, as well as an educational video about free, prior, and informed consent here. Below, you'll see the 3 stages of the FPIC process as we've laid them out in the tool. These are enabling conditions, prerequisites, and then the FPIC process itself. The first covers enabling conditions, which include information that should be learned from the community, information that requires collaborative input from both the project developer and the community together, and then the enabling conditions which require input from the project developer. The second phase, and once you've satisfied all of the enabling conditions, are the prerequisite steps. So these steps sort of outline different requirements for understanding the scope of your project and the project developer's obligation to achieve FPIC, as well as helps establish who the rights holders to FPIC would be in the project vicinity. And the last stage here is just the FPIC process itself. Helps you consider what the project impacts might be to the rights holders, walks you through understanding the willingness of potentially affected rights holders to consider the project. And then you'll establish whether the community wants to enter into negotiations. You'll negotiate an agreement, and a large part is the ongoing sustainability of the FPIC agreement throughout the life cycle of the project. So once you've created an account and we've set you up, you'll be able to see your projects here. And you'll just click open. And this is your dashboard. So your dashboard is where you'll be able to track your progress against all of the activities within the FPIC process. You'll see a dropdown containing the 3 stages of the FPIC process here. This is how you would navigate through the three steps. And when you click into each of these, you'll be able to see your progress. The tool requires documented evidence to upload as proof of compliance with a given activity. However, since FPIC is collaborative, as I mentioned, all these pieces of information could be contributed by the project developer, Indigenous peoples, communities, or third parties. So if we look in one of these conditions, here we have multi-stakeholder working group. You'll see on the left, the rationale, which is just a description of the activity. And then on the right, you'll see the action. So what is required by this step of the process. We've also mentioned here the different types of required documentation you'll need. And then here you'll see a further description of each of these pieces of documentation. You'll notice that each of these activities say to start, meaning no documentation has been uploaded yet. So it helps you track your progress. If we click into an agreement signed by working group members, here again, you'll see more description about what kind of documentation is required. And then here you'll be able to upload your document your documents. It says no documentation has been uploaded yet, but we've also included here some resources and further supporting evidence in case you need more information about what sort of examples or processes you could carry out for this process. As you upload documents, you'll be provided with notifications. Your documents will show up in this bar, and then you'll be able to view them, amend them. If you have other types of users who are able to see your project, they can comment depending on the permissions, but they could view these documents. So if you have, for example, an assessor, they could view the documents, they can comment on them, and then each document will have a comment thread where you can track progress and track comments on each document. Another feature is that the comments for the documents will all be archived. So as you complete these tasks, you'll be able to go through and track your progress, understand where more information was needed, and have a resource where all of the process is sort of logged. Those were just a few of the features that we've implemented in the tool, but we're really excited about the launch of the platform and think it's a bit more user-friendly. And we hope that the platform can be used collaboratively with project developers, communities, investors, and assessors alike. As I referenced earlier, we're still looking for opportunities to further develop the tool, including a case study application. So I'll use this opportunity just to mention that we're still looking for opportunities for an equitable origin facilitated test of the indicators in the field. And a good candidate for this would be a field application. A good candidate for a field application would be a project that is expected to have impacts on Indigenous communities. It could be in the planning phase. It could be an existing project which is changing in scope, in size or duration, for example. It could also be a project entering closure or the remediation phase that requires FPIC, or it could be a process that's already happened and we can retroactively use the tool and see how it would have functioned in that scenario. It would, however, just require that the project stakeholders who are involved, for example, the developer, the investor, affected Indigenous peoples, communities, and the local government would be willing to work together. And then the project stakeholders could commit to testing the tool, to sharing the outcomes and providing feedback to inform the improvement of the tool. So with that, I'll just let you know if you're interested in using the tool, please definitely go to our website, FPIC360.org. I'll post that in the chat as well. And members of the TDI and EO teams will be able to provide setup and support for users throughout the process and walk you through the tool and its requirements. So no need to feel like you'll be thrown in with no guidance. And yeah, if you have any questions as to whether your project could benefit from the tool, please write to us and we'd be happy to walk you through this and find a solution. So I'll hand back over to Vicky and we can go into the question and answer portion of the session.
Thank you so much, Kaki, for talking us through the tool, and also thank you so much all the panelists today to share their insights on the FPIC tool. Going back to the presentation, as you were saying, we are moving now towards the Q&A section. I see there's already a question here. So I invite, if there's a specific question for one of the panelists, just tell us so. Otherwise, I read aloud and you can answer. So one of the first questions is how the tool helps and ensures use of IP language.
I can take that one, Vicky, and maybe also Ruben wants to chime in. So one of the parts of the tool that Kaki covered was how the FPIC process needs to be a lot of upfront work from the project developer in terms of understanding the community and having cultural understanding and appreciation and respect for the community or communities that are involved in the process. So it would be part of that initial kind of assessment of the community and understanding of the community to identify whether there are language barriers in terms of being able to participate in consultation processes leading to consent, and understand the needs of the communities. If they requested, for example, that certain information was to be provided in Indigenous languages, then that should be identified during that needs assessment. I think oftentimes the I in FPIC is overlooked, the informed piece, because Indigenous peoples need to have full information and understanding of the risks and impacts of the project in order to be able to evaluate what conditions they might give consent under if they were willing to consider that. And so too often we've seen, a lot of the impact assessment reports, which are done quote unquote independently, are provided to Indigenous peoples in English. These are very long, very technical documents with no way for Indigenous peoples to really access the information or understand it. So it's a very important issue to ensure that that information is provided in an accessible format in the local language or the Indigenous language or languages as requested by the Indigenous peoples. I don't know, Ruben, if you wanted to add anything else.
Y es un punto muy importante el poder llegar a las comunidades en su idioma, en el entendido de que si bien los representantes de las comunidades hacen la acción de representación, quienes deciden, quienes otorgan su consentimiento son las comunidades. Y como decía Soledad, en realidad se necesita que las comunidades tengan pleno conocimiento de la situación, de los beneficios y de los perjuicios que tenga la decisión y de los impactos que va a tener esta decisión. Por eso es muy importante que que podamos llegar a ellos en su idioma, ¿no? En todas las acciones que desarrollemos.
Great, many thanks both for that. A few other questions that just came through. I think more refer to the tool, so I'll read them all together. One is, do uploaded documents get reviewed? The second is, how is confidentiality ensured through the web-based platform? And the third question is, could multiple stakeholders access or input into the tool in a specific project and monitor steps and progress, for example, community members?
Sure, I can take this and I will reshare my screen here. So yes, to answer the first question, uploaded documents can get reviewed. As I mentioned, the project developer could assign different users. So if they have an assessor, we could help them set up a profile for the assessors, and the assessors would log in, and what they would see are your documents. So if you have a document here, you can click it open and it'll pop up so your assessors can easily access all of your documentation. They can also comment. So if it's incomplete or they have questions, they can make a comment here. And then the assessors will have this approve function where they can approve or not approve a document. So the whole process is tracked and managed within the tool. And then as these documents are approved, you'll start seeing your little progress bar on the dashboard reflecting that. So it'll reflect how many sections you've completed and are approved, so you can monitor your progress that way. And then could multiple stakeholders access or have input into the project? Yes. So if, for example, a community wanted to have an account and upload their own documentation, we can create different user interfaces for that. So it would all be logged in the same project, but different users could be providing input on different pieces of the tool to form a more collaborative view of the whole process. And then ensuring confidentiality through the web-based platform. That's definitely a concern with our hosting, and we'll be taking precautions definitely to make sure that all the evidence uploaded here is protected, confidential, and secure for all of the users. So hopefully that answers your question. If not, feel free to ask a follow-up.
Just to add to what Kaki said, the tool also allows different views. So, for example, a standard setting organization or financial institution that might be overlooking several projects could see all of those projects, provided their consent to them to view it, and then but they wouldn't be able to edit anything. And then similarly, the project developers could they would only be able to see their own projects. They wouldn't be able to see others' projects. So the idea is that this would be an individual portal for each project to allow for that information to be viewed by the stakeholders involved in the process.
Thank you both. And I think that related to the platform, maybe it would be interesting to know if there's training available for assurance providers or project developers on how to use the FPIC-360 tool.
Sure. Yeah, there's training available. We're working on some educational videos to help you walk through the platform. We have a few resources on the FPIC-360 website as well. And then we're always happy as Equitable Origin to answer any questions and help users walk through the tool in the first round. So yes, it's being developed and more to come.
Perfect. Thank you, Kaki. And yeah, one comment on the previous answer was, while assurance of confidentiality will be very important for company developers. So I think that was a really interesting point. A follow-up question, please feel free again to drop your questions in the Q&A box, is how is the FPIC-360 tool recognized or being used by other organizations?
I can take that one.
Mm-hmm.
So we have the working group or the community of practice of potential users of the tool. We've also seen some financial institutions interested in using it with some of their project partners. And we've been working with the US Agency for International Development to adapt the tool for use in their programs and in line with their Indigenous Peoples policy. And that version will be available on their website in the coming months, as will a training e-learning module on using that tool. And then some of the standards that are part of the ISEAL community have also referenced the FPIC-360 tool in guidance materials on implementing their standards, such as the Responsible Jewelry Council. So of course, that's also an option for any ISEAL members or voluntary sustainability standards who want to reference the tool or invite their assurance providers to use the tool. We also did a workshop with a group of assurance providers that was hosted by Accreditation Services International to get their feedback on the usability of the tool as a potential add-on to the assurance process. And so we're happy to do that with other assessors, consultants, and assurance providers going forward.
Thank you for that. I can't see any other questions popping into the Q&A box. Don't be shy. And probably building up on what you're just saying, so I think it would be interesting also to touch upon just briefly on how does the FPIC-360 tool help standard setting organizations to integrate community perspectives into assuring FPIC?
Yeah, I think a lot of ISEAL member standards and other voluntary standards have certain requirements for interviewing stakeholders as part of the assurance process, but that could be based on whether the assurance provider knows who the representatives are that they should get in touch with, and kind of relies on the assurance provider to make that determination and for them to be selected as part of the sample during the verification process, where as the FPIC-360 tool is designed to enable a more proactive approach from communities who can feed information into the tool on a regular basis, and can also use the tool themselves, whether or not the project developer is using the tool. Indigenous organizations can use the tool to monitor FPIC processes that they're involved with and provide information to assurance providers proactively rather than reactively. So it doesn't only have to be used by the project developer or only the assurance provider. Ideally, it would be used by the community as well. As Kaki mentioned, that was initially going to be our phase 2 development of the tool, but with COVID, we had to move forward with the platform in the virtual space, and then come back to the community user interface and module design in the next phase.
Thank you so much, Sol. And we have another question coming through, which says, does the tool have a way of capturing follow-up actions after the initial FPIC process has been completed? For example, initial consent has been obtained and the land has been acquired, starting to be developed, or continue community engagement and monitoring long-term agreements?
Sure, I can take that one. Yes, so the tool has, let me just bring up my screen again. Part of the FPIC process steps includes ongoing sustainability, so ongoing monitoring of the FPIC process itself. And so some of the indicators include ensuring that there's ongoing dialogue with the community, monitoring and evaluating the agreement that's been agreed upon, and then also, very importantly, having a grievance and remediation mechanism in case something goes wrong or there are any issues with the process. So definitely sustainability is a part of the ongoing management of the process, and it should happen throughout the life cycle of the project. So yes.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you so much, Kaki. And if there are no further questions, I think we get to the end of this session. But of course, you will receive this presentation as well with our contact details. So if you have any other questions, don't feel free to reach out to us. Also to explore the website and the tool as well. And as we mentioned, the recording of this webinar will be available on the FPIC-360 website as well. I want to thank the panelists for their time, for the hard work behind this tool, and for all the attendees today to be here. And I hope it has been quite useful being here today. Oh, sorry, we have one last question. Do we have some time for that? To the panelists, I think we can address this one. Perfect. How would a new development, for example, a project expansion, appear on the dashboard? Is that a new project, as there would be a new FPIC process and agreement?
Sure, I can take this. Yeah, I think it just has to do with first figuring out what kind of an FPIC process you need to do. So it would be a new project in the tool, for example, but whether you start and are required to fill out all of the activities from scratch may not be required. Obviously, if you have all of this documented already, it would be very quick to just satisfy all of the activities within this with documentation. But yeah, it would be a new project within the tool, but depending on who you're working with and whether you need to go through all of the process steps would be sort of up to you and the assurance providers, and yeah, it would be a case by case. The tool outlines sort of best practice and the largest range of things that would be required. So yeah, they may not all be applicable to you and your project all the time.
Vicky, I think Ruben was also going to comment on some of the questions.
Okay, yes, sure, yes.
Sí, gracias. Justamente el pensar en la expectativa que tenemos quienes trabajamos en el tema, quienes tenemos que defender muchas veces a las comunidades ante el Estado. A mí me ha pasado como docente universitario en posgrado que he tenido varios funcionarios técnicos sociales que van a los talleres a ver cómo se hace una consulta. Y uno pensaría que el Estado es como el enemigo, la persona que uno tiene que enfrentar. Y en realidad ese Estado, a través de las personas, también quiere cumplir derechos en la medida de sus posibilidades, pero como les comentaba, muchas veces no sabe cómo cumplirlos y lo hace como puede. Lo que me preguntaban los técnicos sociales a los que les mandan a hacer los trámites de consulta es cómo se hace, y luego qué sigue, y luego qué pasa, y en estos casos qué hacemos. Y en realidad es esas ganas de querer cumplir el derecho, pero si no lo conoces, si no lo manejas, si no tienes una guía, en realidad lo que vas a hacer es que por los plazos y tiempos te imponga, el Estado te imponga que cumplas como puedas. Y ahí es donde se generan las primeras vulneraciones, los primeros desacuerdos entre comunidades. Y esa es la expectativa que tengo personalmente, y creo que muchas comunidades van a tener, de tener una herramienta que te permita dar esas señales de qué sigue. Ya hemos hecho este paso y después qué sigue, cómo continuamos, ambas partes, ¿no? Esa es la expectativa que tengo en esta herramienta. Creo que va a ser muy útil y estamos muy pendientes de cómo va a funcionar. Gracias.
Many thanks, Ruben, for that. Any other panelists want to share some final questions or comments? Or if there are any questions as well, please feel free to pop them into the chat before we finish today. Okay, so you can see our contact details there just to reach out to us. If you have, if you explore and you want to know more, please feel free to reach out. And again, thank you everyone so much for making the time, for working on this such interesting tool, and all the attendees today for participating. I hope it has been useful, and we look forward to hearing from you soon, and have a lovely rest of the day. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.